June 16, 1775, the Continental Congress appointed George Washington, a Virginian, the commander of the new Continental Army that was assembling outside of Boston. The nucleus of that army had been a mob that had descended upon Boston in the weeks after the Lexington alarm. 20,000 New Englanders from across the region flooded into Boston to bottle up the British, and they were successful. Commanding this assembly of 20,000 New Englanders who besieged the British in Boston was the commander and general of the Massachusetts Committee of Safety, Artemus Ward. He had an arduous task to face. Somehow he had to organize this rabble into a cohesive fighting force. Enlistments of officers had to be made. Chains of communication had to be developed, and supplies had to be found. And that was a problem. Supplies were running out. When Washington arrives on July 2nd, he is shocked with what he sees. The camp is a wreck, sanitation is very poor, and Washington knows he's got to deal with something on an administrative level. And so Washington is able to bring into his immediate military family Henry Knox, a Bostonian, and Nathaniel Greene, a New Englander, two men who were self-taught in the art of war. Washington's priority after assuming command of the Continental Army is to organize the camp, provide for better sanitation, and get the British out of Boston. That's his biggest conundrum. Washington, in his fiery and impetuous way, wants to take the British on with a direct assault on the city, but his subordinate officers can tell him that this is foolhardy, and they have to come up with a plan B. Knox believes that if they can fortify the heights and hills around Boston with pieces of artillery, they can force the British hand. But the question was, where to get the artillery? The answer? Upper New York, Fort Ticonderoga, which in May 1775 had been captured by Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys and Colonel Benedict Arnold. Inside the walls of that fort was the key to the success of breaking the British out of Boston. As the New England winter begins to set in, Knox and a band of hardy men leave Boston in mid-November 1775 and trek westward to Fort Ticonderoga. They get there in early December. Knox scans the provisions that he's got under his control now and picks 58 pieces, including mortars and 12 and 18-pound cannons. They then affix these weapons to improvised sleds and drag this artillery 300 miles east of Boston through a brutal Massachusetts winter. Along the way, Knox writes his wife saying that this is an impossible task. But by mid-January 1776, Knox arrives in Massachusetts with his prize. While Washington, Knox, and their men labored to emplace the cannons and artillery around Boston, life for the British in Boston was very tenuous. They had little food, particularly meat. By March 1776, the British knew that their hand had been forced. The artillery was in place, and Washington was prepared to bombard the city. That didn't have to happen. The British decided to evacuate and give Washington Boston without firing a shot. George Washington has won the first round of the American Revolution. He would need his luck to hold out for the next 7 years as they waged a war for independence against the greatest military power on earth.